been the legend, that very long years ago, one couple in Malayalam, what is called as Kerala, worshipped the deity Karuppu, with a great devotion, even they couldn't think about a childbirth, to them. To make the criticism of their childlessness, as falsehood, they were given a handsome baby boy, by the grace of Karuppu. Their dedicated devotion continued, even after the childbirth taken place. They were performing puja to Karuppu, just by laying their child, in the sanctum itself. One day, the couple locked the temple, with their child locked inside the sanctum. After having reached their home, they found their child missing. They had noted that, they forgot awaken their child, sleeping inside the sanctum. They rushed to the temple, and tried to open the sanctum door. Suddenly, they heard Karuppu's voice, that they never been had panic over that issue, and they could have got back their child, on the next morning. But, due to the affection of their child, they tried to open the lock. This made Karuppu to get angry over them, and said to have been thrown the child, with broken parts of body, like trunk, and limbs. Thus, Karuppu disgraced those couple. Having seen this, both of them fainted on the ground, and shouted with Buster, that they would never do the puja thereafter, to Karuppu. They put all the belongings of Karuppu, which were scythe, belt, and nail shoes etc. in a wooden box, locked it, and earthed it. They had vacated to some other place. As years had rolled on, one day, there had been a heavy downpour, in that area, caused flood across the village. As the result, the wooden box in which, the belongings of Karuppu had been kept, unearthed, and had floated along with the stream of the flood, traveled through the places, like Thiruppachethi, Kumuli, Kumbum, Thani, and had reached the river Vaihe of Madurai. Along with the stream of the flood, the wooden box was nearing a place, called Maranadu, where it got diversion, towards west in direction, through a sub-channel of the river Vaihe, and finally reached the huge reservoir, called as Kanmai, in Tamil language. That is in Maranadu, just 4 kilometers south, to a place called Thiruppachethi. That wooden box had been floating on the reservoir. Having seen a wooden box floating on the reservoir, it had been identified by 2 races of people, in that village. While having registered the ownership of that wooden box, one of them preferred the beautiful wooden box, whereas, the rest of them claimed the properties, inside the box. They both opened that box, understood that, the belongings of Karuppu, could have occupied that box. They constructed a temple on the banks of that reservoir, and consecrated Malayalam Karuppu there. From that day onwards, Malayalam Karuppu became name transferred as Maranadu Karuppu. The people made the deity, as cone-shaped anthill, just by applying the sandal paste over it. As per the rites, reserved by the 2 races of the villagers, one who preferred the wooden box, have been honored of doing the temple's day-to-day maintenance, whereas, The second one, who preferred the properties inside the wooden box, have been honored as the soothsayers of the temple. So, until today, this custom is strictly followed. There has been also another legend that there had been some important things found missing in the palace of Sivaganga. The king had ordered to all the foretellers of that surrounding regions to find out the whereabouts of that missed articles. But none of them had passed in that attempt, which made the king very angry. He imprisoned all those foretellers who were failed to succeed their attempts. The king came to know about the foreteller of Maranadu, and ordered the foreteller to come to Sivaganga. Before having left for Sivaganga, the foreteller worshipped Maranadu Karuppu, and had immersed on Karuppu. So, instead of that foreteller, Karuppu himself disguised as foreteller, and reached the palace of Sivaganga. He very exactly pointed out that missing articles. The king had realized that the foreteller had been nothing but Maranadu Karuppu. He immediately fell on the ground to the feet of Karuppu. The king implored Karuppu also to enshrine there in the palace itself. But Karuppu had refused to that request, with one honor of making the king of Sivaganga being the first in garlanding Karuppu on Masi Kalari festival. Kalari has been the grand festival, celebrated in Maranadu, fell in the Tamil month of Masi, every year. That day is a full moon day, also the day of Sivaratri, that is a holy night of Lord Shiva. As per the honor that Karuppu had given to the king of Sivaganga, Karuppu is being garlanded with the very first flower garland, as usually by the palace of Sivaganga. Thereafter only, he will be garlanded with various sizes, and various cost worth of flowers, on that whole day. As Karuppu has been very fond of flowers, he is also called as King of Flowers, colloquially, Malayarsan in Tamil language. On that day, the foreteller is said to have been stood on two sides, balanced with four persons, and soothsaying to the devotees, the whole night. A lot of gatherings would have visited here, on that gala day of Masi Kalari festival. Has been a legend regarding the reservoir of Maranadu. The reservoir of Maranadu has been very huge enough to seem like an ocean. When it reaches its full capacity, there have been no words to describe its grandeur. On those days, it had been very risky to safeguard its banks, when reached its full capacity. A very long years ago, the reservoir had reached its full capacity, that it could have been supposed to be broken. So, the king of Sivaganga had ordered the people to strengthen all of its banks. He had appointed 2 of his men to watch about the condition of the reservoir, and also ordered that one of them could strictly report him every day. This system of reporting had gone normally, until one of the king's men failed to return to Maranadu one day. So, the second man had to go for reporting to Sivaganga on that day. He was searching for an alternate to take over the responsibility of watching the reservoir. That time, an old man with a turban tied on his head came there, and he had accepted that responsibility until the king's man would take over the charge of responsibility again. The king's man reached the palace, and told the king everything about the reservoir's detail, and also about the alternate man he had deputed for watching the reservoir. The king wanted to know about the appearance of that newly deputed person. The guard clearly explained the appearance of the turban-worn old man, who had been deputed for watching the reservoir. So the king understood from the guard's dialogue, that the new man had been nothing but Karuppu. Suddenly, the king had been struck with an idea, as the old man had promised to guard the reservoir, until his man would reach to Maranadu. The king beheaded the guard, so that Karuppu, who disguised as an old man, would wait for the arrival of his man, and hence the protection of the reservoir of Maranadu would have been always under the control of Karuppu thereafter. The king of Sivaganga thus paved a permanent way for the protection of the reservoir of Maranadu. As the king's man never and ever would return to Maranadu, the reservoir is said to have been under the rigid protection of Maranatha Karuppu forever.